Hello and welcome to the Under Centre podcast. I'm your host, Daragh Martin, and I'm joined once again by Fionn Malloy. 2 shows in a row with you, Fionn. I guess I could count myself pretty lucky.
Yeah, I know it's been hard to get now the last couple of weeks, but I think I've finally sorted out the schedule now. Me and Jake are inching closer and closer to a compromise. I think he's about ready to say I'm sorry. So hopefully we'll have the full contingent back pretty soon.
Well, he could say I'm sorry at some point during the show tonight, and he could join us maybe for the second half. You never know. We'll see. But we have our Thursday night preview, Thursday night football preview. Obviously, tonight is the Carolina Panthers traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. The Panthers, who are 2-0, and the Texans, who are 1-1. Both sort of surprising records that I don't think many people thought was going to happen. But one person who did think that the Texans were going to do a lot better than everyone else thought this season is our guest for the first half of the show. We're going to be focusing mainly on the Houston Texans, and that is friend of the show, Graham Henderson, who you might know from the Texans UK Twitter page as well, and I think class at one point as the Houston Texans' biggest fan. Graham, it's great to speak to you again. How you been?
Yeah, I've been fine. Thanks for having me back on.
It's no problem at all. No problem at all. It's we're delighted to have you on, and I'm sure you were delighted to be able to come on to gloat a little bit about how good the Texans have been this year.
Yeah, it's come as a surprise to a lot of people, but as we spoke before on the last pod that we did together, I had a sneaky suspicion the Texans would be better than most gave credit for. I think it's all the guys coming in with chips on their shoulder, something to prove. You know, Tyrod Taylor, he's been around the league and he knows how to fit into systems. So I think that's helped a lot as well.
Yeah, definitely, and he's definitely one of the standout players so far this year. Unfortunately, though, going down during the game on Sunday, which means he won't be taking part tonight. It's going to be the rookie Davis Mills at quarterback today. You know, maybe some people speculated that Deshaun Watson might have came in, but those rumors were quashed almost as soon as they started on Sunday. So, what are you hoping now to see from Mills this evening?
What I'm hoping for is, as we've seen in the Browns game, when he first came in, he looked jittery. I think we can all agree on that. You know, he threw a pick that was in quite a dangerous area. But I think once the game continued on, they condensed the playbook. And we've seen players like Mark Ingram shoulder some of the burden of that game, I think. And they started hard running. We have a good crop of running backs in the team. So we need to lean on them a bit more. And then once we get the run game really established, then we can maybe see what Mills is all about.
Yeah, Graham, you mentioned in the show we already referenced, but the preseason show, we asked you what was your high point of the team as it stood at the moment, given all the controversy that was going on, and you highlighted the running back room, and I think they've really showed up and showed out so far this season. Mark Ingram's doing a pretty stellar job as what I think you could consider the number one back there in the Texans. That must have you excited.
Yeah, every run he seems to run, it's all hard running that he does. But it's not just that. You'll see when he comes off the field, he's also a good bit of a cheerleader on that sidelines, and he seems to get everyone motivated and keeps the energy levels high. So, yeah, when you look through the depth, we've actually got our top 4 running backs are actually renowned starters at some point on teams. So there's a lot of experience in that room. Lots.
Yeah, and the names that are there, yeah, like you're saying, the likes of Philip Lindsay, who was a starter with the Broncos, and obviously David Johnson, who was a starter with the Cardinals as well. So there is a lot of depth there, and you sort of have a running back for sort of any situation, you could say, because you have Ingram for if you want to, you know, hard yards up the middle there, you know, trying to run between a couple of guards and tackles, and then you have Lindsay for like the speed guy on the outside.
Yeah, and I think you'll see that David Johnson's been featured more like a third big back. You know, he'll come in for maybe like that short yardage gains, and he's actually quite good at getting out of the backfield and becoming maybe somewhat of a slot receiver over the middle because of his size, and that's really playing to our strengths. And I think those kind of plays is really going to help Mills out when we play the Panthers.
Speaking of helping Mills out, Brandon Cooks has been a serious threat in the wide receiver game. Maybe the only bad thing you could say is maybe no one else has really stepped up singularly to help him out as much over the first two games. But I think in terms of helping out Mills, he's got to be a crucial piece of the puzzle alongside that running game tonight.
Yeah, I think the commentary team mentioned it against the Browns that Brandon Cooks finds a way to work with the quarterbacks that he's got. You know, he finds a way to quickly work out how to communicate, and you'll have seen that they missed on a huge downfield attempt, Cooks and Mills, and that could have been a turning point in the game on Sunday. So maybe with the extra reps that they'll get through practice this week, they'll be able to maybe make those kind of plays work. It'll be exciting to see it if the two do take that big long bombs down the field. Who doesn't like seeing them?
Definitely. Looking at the other side of the ball, though, on the defensive side, because obviously you're coming up against one of the top running backs in Christian McCaffrey tonight, and it's going to be a big job for that defensive line and the linebackers as well to sort of keep him in check. And you know, with losing the likes of JJ Watt last year, who was always a big loss from a team, but the defensive line that, like, you know, anchored by the likes of Whitney Merciless, and then the linebacking core, you know, anchored by the likes of Christian Kirksey and Zach Cunningham as well, have sort of been able to hold their own in the first two games.
Yeah, I think Lovie Smith's come in and really hit home to these guys about playing aggressive, go get the ball football. I've enjoyed watching the defense. I think come on leaps and bounds from last season. I don't think we could have been any worse. I think we maybe had 9 takeaways all season last year, and I think we're already at 5 after 2 games. So that goes to show you the kind of aggression that defense has got. It's a shame when you see people like Charles Omane, who is now like our main defensive end. He got a bit banged up at the weekend, but I think he'll be good to go. And Justin Reed in the back, he's been massive already this season for us. You know, the guy's wanting paid next season, obviously, so he's balling out. But I really hope that he can get over his knee injury from the weekend, and because he's a huge part of that defense at the back.
Yeah, and he has been on the injury report for the last couple of days. Didn't participate on Tuesday in training. Neither did Danny Amendola. So they'll be looking to sort of get them hopefully back in the lineup. If Justin Reed isn't sort of able to go then tonight, who would you be looking at to sort of maybe look after the backfield then?
I'd really like to see Lonnie Johnson step into the role. You know, I think he's got the aggression levels. He's certainly not as aggressive as DJ Swearinger used to be back in the day. You know, he was more about the boom than actually playing the position. So I like Lonnie, and I think he'll go on to do big things for us. So I think if Lonnie Johnson can really step up in the backfield, we'll be doing okay. We took a hell of injuries at the weekend, Browns included, but it seemed to be a cursed field on Sunday for both teams. But we took our licks.
Yeah, I was laughing there, Graham. As a Washington fan, we've had some experience with Swearinger as well. I agree with you. He loved laying a boom and didn't always love actually watching the ball and keeping track of his assignment. I wanted to talk to you a little bit while we're on the defense, because we did discuss it, how those journeymen, especially on defense, can actually provide a passable defense because they're used to playing in systems, and they know that playing your role is just as important as being a standout player. You already talked about the aggression as well. What's going to be the key on defense? For me, I think it's going to be harnessing that aggression with the 4-man front to go after and try and shut down the running game, as put as much pressure on the quarterback as possible without necessarily overdoing it. I think striking that balance is going to be tricky. But what do you think are the keys on defense for you guys to shut down this pretty potent Panthers offense?
Yeah, it's got to start with containing McCaffrey. I was in Houston a couple of years ago when you were allowed to travel, when we played the Panthers in NRG, and everything came through that man. There was nothing that didn't have McCaffrey written all over it. And being up in the stands, you know what, like, you start shouting, you just leave everyone else. Doesn't matter. Just cancel the one guy, and then we'll concentrate on anything else. But if we cannot shut him down, I'm actually quite fearful of what's going to happen. We really need to get him shackled down early.
Yeah, and they have done their best to add other pieces to that, because DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson have had good starts to the year with the Panthers as well. But obviously, if the other person other than McCaffrey getting all the headlines is Sam Darnold, who's come in and has had a good start under his new side there with the Panthers too. You know, the one thing that maybe is not seen a little bit, and we've talked about it before in previous shows, is the pace that Darnold has and how he is likely to sort of break out, maybe go for a run himself. You know, is that going to be important now coming up to tonight, that you sort of maybe, I'm not saying dedicate maybe one of the linebackers to be sort of a QB spy, but to sort of, you know, have that sort of area covered with a certain zone defensive scheme to make sure that Darnold isn't able to run out of pocket?
Yeah, I think that would be an important defensive feature to have in this game. Probably like your Zach Cunningham, who's side to side one of the fastest linebackers probably in our side. So, you know, have him as the spy. If he does break out, hopefully it doesn't get to that and we can put enough pressure on that he can't. But it's going to be tough, especially with mobile quarterbacks. You know, we've had our struggles with them in the past. And it'll be a decent challenge for our defense. It'll give us a baseline of where they actually are this season going forward. So it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, and just finally a few questions sort of outside of the game, because we've seen obviously the whole off season with speculation when it comes to Deshaun Watson, and he's been healthy scratches, and it's not looking likely that he's going to be playing a game again for the Houston Texans. We'll find out later on if he ever plays again now in the NFL. But you know, with the speculation with Miami all off season and the fact that Tua has gone down now with fractured ribs, so he could be out for a short period of time. I don't know. Obviously, you have your ears closer to the ground on what's going on around the Texans. Has there been any sort of movement in trying to get sort of Watson out of Houston?
As far as I'm aware, there's not been. I don't know. I was fully expecting Miami to be on the phone on Monday to the Texans after Tua getting injured, but there was that speculation about will Deshaun play on Thursday, like in the game, and then it was we'll see. That was the quote, I think, from Cully. We'll have to see, and that got quickly crushed. I genuinely don't think he'll play this season for anyone, because I think if he tries to play for anyone, he'll be put on the exempt list. And that's just my personal opinion. So as for teams trading for him, I think anyone's going to wait until everything's cleared up. That's all, without making any of us get in any sort of trouble about talking about these issues. Mm-hmm. I really think it will be one of those, once everything's cleared up and all the dust settled, then there'll be phone calls made, and then things will start moving forward. He won't play for the Texans again. There's a huge part of the fan base is desperate for him to throw a ball again for Houston, but I don't think Deshaun wants to. I don't think he's for playing for Houston anymore. So I'm through that stage of grief now. I've moved on from denial into let's look forward. So I'm happy enough to roll with Ty God or Mills, just whoever, you know. I actually think it would be a shame for the Texans now, after Taylor being told he's going to be out for like 3 to 4 weeks, maybe not to try Cam Newton, just as a possible backup there. Mm-hmm. That would be a better move for us, certainly, and just to move on from the whole Deshaun Watson scenario, you know.
Mm-hmm. Graham, as that kind of unfolds, and as you said, the fan base, of course, there's always going to be a certain number of the fan base who want to see him play again, given the talent that he is. But I get the sense anyway, most of the fan base has your opinion where it's a pity he won't play, aside from the off-field issues, given his talent on the pitch. But you have to move on. You've seen the team go 1-1, which is better than a lot of people thought they would. How do you think that affects the price for Watson in terms of, is maybe what you guys are expecting to get back from should a trade happen, has it gone down a little bit where you're almost like, just get him off the books, get him out of the minds, we'll take maybe a first rounder, where in the preseason it was talking 3 first rounders, 5 first rounders in terms of future first round picks. For you personally, how do you think the price has changed for Watson at the moment?
I generally don't think his price has come down. I just think that we did well in getting Taylor into the building and teaching him whatever scheme, Tim Kelly and that wanted to run. Deshaun Watson will win teams games. There's no denying that. So I think the right team, like Miami, if they did pick up the phone, they need him more than we need to have him sitting on our bench. Mm-hmm. For their franchise. So we're not going to give him up for it's not the Bill O'Brien era anymore. There's nobody getting to rob the bank anymore. So I don't think his price has changed, and I think that's why he'll stay on our bench until teams get really desperate.
Okay, it would be interesting to see, especially when it comes up to week 7, week 8, when the trade deadline, approaches, to see if there are any, what you could say, quote unquote, desperate teams. But like you were saying there, Graham, any team that trades for him and then tries to play him will probably met with the commissioner's exempt list. So he probably won't be playing football at all, one way or another, this season at least. But before we let you go, we'll do a quick U-turn back to tonight's game. And what are your keys for the Texans tonight to make sure that they win? Outside of obviously the usual, like Christian McCaffrey has to be kept in check. But is there any sort of topics or areas to look at that haven't been talked about enough that you think are going to be important tonight?
I think the Texans' tight end room is going to be a big key in tonight's game. Pharaoh Brown, if he plays, hugely aggressive tight end, but I think he's already built up chemistry with the 2 quarterbacks, that he's a dependable outlet. I think Anthony Miller will be back into this game after injury, so it'll be interesting to see what he can bring to the field. We're going to be down Nico Collins and Danny Amendola. I think they're both going to be ruled out for this game. So it's going to be, can the tight ends pick up the slack of some of the wide receivers out there? Because I think the way Mills is going to have to work this game is going to be short field yardage, a lot of short field yardage. So I think that's the key to us winning this game, is if we can keep the ball on our offensive side and try and get our defense off as quick as possible.
Excellent. And then finally, last question. What is your prediction for tonight, score-wise?
I generally think the Texans are going to be able to squeak it. So I think it's going to be 24-17, the Texans. Right.
Okay. So definitely a high scoring game for sure. I think I like that. I think so. I think that that they obviously have a chance. I think I would have liked them more in this game personally if Tyrod was playing. The fact that he's not is going to be a big issue, and the defensive line in Carolina has been pretty solid so far this year. So we'll have to see what happens there. But listen, Graham, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us tonight. We really hope that you enjoy the game later and you obviously get the result that you're hoping for.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Graham. Absolute pleasure.
We will be back in a couple of minutes where we'll be focusing on the Carolina Panthers side of things when we're going to be talking to Antwan Stanley from the Riot Report. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back in about 30 seconds. And welcome back to the Under Center podcast for the second half of our Thursday night football preview. Of course, the Carolina Panthers taking on the Houston Texans later on this evening. So we're going to focus on the Carolina Panthers side of things. And joining us to talk about the Panthers is Antwan Stanley, who writes for the Riot Report. Antwan, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Excellent. We are excellent. Looking forward, especially to the game later on this evening. And looking at the Panthers heading into this game, of course, 2-0 record, one of only 7 teams left to be undefeated, coming off a fantastic win on Sunday against the New Orleans Saints by 26 points to 7. It's not just an impressive win, a regular season win, but an important divisional matchup as well for possibly a wild card spot.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, just to get off to a 2-0 start, obviously you beat the Jets, and the Saints. I know they're going in a little bit of transition too, even though with Jameis Winston coming off of Drew Brees, but to get a quality win, and you saw what they were able to do against the Packers in Week 1. They pretty much shut down that offense and Aaron Rodgers and Aaron, Jones and that crew. So yeah, I think it's a big time win, especially get those first 2 at home, and now you're going to go on the road for the next couple of weeks too, as well, starting with Texans team that I think even though Tyrod Taylor's going to be out, I think people will probably think they're better. They're playing better than what I think a lot of people maybe expected heading into this game.
Yeah, Antwan, before we get into analyzing exactly what needs to happen in this game for the Panthers to win, I wanted to get your opinion on the quarterback situation. One of the big quarterback moves in the offseason, we didn't get a chance to talk to you about it beforehand, is, of course, Sam Darnold coming over to the Panthers. What did you make of that move, and what have you made of his performance so far this season?
Well, I mean, at the time, it was kind of like one of those moves where you're still getting a young guy. You can kind of see what he can possibly do and, have a year, see if he can be the guy. If he can't be the guy, then you go out and draft somebody next year in the 2022 draft. But so far, the reviews have been pretty good. And Darnold, I think he's made every kind of throw that you want, has not turned the ball over that much. He did have that, crazy freakly play, fumble / or whatever you want to call it, the turnover, where he probably should have just ate it and took the sack there. But outside of that, I thought he's played really well within this offense. I think, maybe the biggest critique, probably not necessarily his fault, but just really the offense in general, is just they haven't been able to generate a lot of offense after halftime in the second half. And I think that's definitely going to need to improve, especially as you get later on and when the weather starts to get a little bit colder, teams start to get a little bit more film on you. And the Panthers are definitely going to have to do a better job making second half adjustments to what teams are doing. And that's probably be my only nitpicking of them so far in Darnold.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen how good Darnold has been, and last season the Panthers had Teddy Bridgewater under center, and he did look good at the start of the season. But one important factor that he missed for most of last season was Christian McCaffrey being injured and not being available, which sort of maybe hampered him a little bit. And in those a lot of close games that the Panthers were involved in, having Christian McCaffrey may have swung the tide, and maybe they could have ended up with a better record. And how important is it going to be? And like this could be an understatement of a question, but how important is it going to be now to have Christian McCaffrey fit all season to help Sam Darnold's progression in the team?
I mean, anytime you have one of the best players in football, I mean, they're obviously going to help your ball team. But yeah, I think having a guy that can run the ball pretty well, especially when you need him to, and also getting somebody that can catch the ball out the backfield too as well. He has another dimension that takes pressure off for DJ Moore, who's having a tremendous year throughout the first 2 games of the season, and also Robbie Anderson, who had a great year last year too as well. So it takes pressure off of those guys and just add another added dimension to their offense. And you take that away, then you're kind of not only you're looking for a running game, but you're also looking for somebody that can, take some pressure off Sam Darnold when he gets in a little bit of trouble too as well. But yeah, anytime you can add somebody like that, I think it's definitely a big benefit to your offense.
What a relief that he came back just as dynamic as when he went out injured. We've seen Saquon take a little bit of time to get back in the groove, but McCaffrey's really hit the ground running in the passing game as well. That's got to be great for Darnold to have that kind of blanket like you already talked about and keep that offense churning along.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why they kept he didn't have to miss 13 games last year, but I think it came a point where Panthers were out of it anyway, so it's really no benefit to really put him back in there. I know he wanted to play the last few games of the season, but they kind of protected him from himself and just say, you know what, take the rest of the time off, get ready for the off season, and we need you 100% healthy for the 2021 season. And I think you're starting to see the benefits of that, at least early on.
Yeah, sure. And now moving forward to the game this evening, you mentioned Tyrod Taylor is out for the Texans. Davis Mills is going to be under center. And you'd assume that he's going to have a bit of a tough time because that defensive line, especially with Brian Burns, and importantly as well, I think Morgan Fox, who's had a really good start to the year too, is going to be putting a lot of pressure on the rookie.
Yeah, I think Hassan Reddick has been a huge addition for this team too, as well. I mean, a lot of people talk about Brian Burns and the way he's played the last couple of years in his career, but having a guy like Hassan Reddick, who a double-digit sack guy, what he was with the Cardinals last year, and really getting off to a great start this year too, as well. Has 3 sacks through 2 games. That's taking a lot of pressure off of Burns, and then you got a guy like Morgan Fox too, who was part of that Rams defense too, as well. I think very underrated signing for the Panthers too. And you have a Derrick Brown. Gross Matos won't play on Thursday, but I definitely think he's somebody that can benefit there in the passing game, in the pass rushing game too, as well. I think the Panthers want to just have a collection of guys that they can interchange in and out throughout the course of a game that can continue to get pressure on the quarterback throughout the course of a game. And I definitely seen that throughout the first 2 games of the season. And I definitely think it'll be something that you see later on as well.
Yeah, and looking a little further back behind the defensive line of the linebacking group, a name that has flashed this year and has been fantastic has been Shaq Thompson. Since he's gotten that number changed to number 7, he's definitely been sort of playing out of his skin so far.
Yeah, I think the first game of the season, he really played well. Last week was a little bit quieter game, but the first game of the season had 10 tackles. Obviously had the interception too on Zach Wilson, tackle for loss as well. And it's somebody that they need somebody dynamic in the linebacking game too, as far as their linebackers. Obviously, trying to replace a guy like Luke Kuechly is never easy too, as somebody that's a future Hall of Famer potentially, but I think Shaq has been there long enough where he feels like he's starting to get a little bit comfortable, especially in Phil Snow's defense, where maybe he can have a breakout type of season. But yeah, it's just about consistency. Can continue it for a 17-game season now, and we'll have to see if that remains to be seen throughout the course of the year. But he's definitely off to a really good start.
Antwan, were you surprised by how hot the Carolina Panthers defense started, or did you kind of see it coming with the moves they made in the offseason?
I mean, I was surprised last week. I think against the Jets, not necessarily, because you're playing a rookie quarterback, and obviously, whenever you're your first time starter in the league, it can be a little bit difficult on you. Last week against the Saints, I was definitely a little bit surprised too, the way they were able to get pressure on Jameis and really shut down their offense. What really surprised me is just the way they limited Alvin Kamara. He got 5 yards throughout the course of the game too. So that really surprised me more than anything, being able to stop the run the way that they have. And like I say, it'd be interesting to see can they keep it up for the rest of the year. But that really surprised me, just the way they were to limit one of the best running backs in the game to just a minuscule number like that.
Yeah, breaking so many fantasy owners' hearts last weekend, the Panthers were for sure. But it's a different sort of running attack that they'll have to face this evening against the Texans, sort of like a three-headed monster, you could say, because they've got obviously Mark Ingram, Philip Lindsay, and Johnson there as well. So different players with different attributes. We spoke to Graham Henderson, who's a Texans fan earlier on, and he was mentioned that the different dynamics that these running backs bring to the game, like the Ingram is the hard running sort of running back, Philip Lindsay is the speed guy on the outside, and of course Johnson can be more that like pass catching running back if needed too. So there's a lot to plan for tonight, especially for the Panthers defense.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you have a young quarterback in there. You're definitely going to run the football and try to shorten the game as much as possible and take pressure off of him. So it's going to come down. Can the Panthers make those stops defensively once again, slowing down the rushing game if they can, then get the Texans in second and third and long situations, and then pin their ears back. That's kind of what the Panthers have been doing early on this season. Been able to get those quarterbacks in those tough situations where you have to throw the ball, where it's like you maybe in a second and 4 or third and 3 or whatever the case may be, you can have options there offensively, second and third and long, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. You pretty much know what the defense is going to do at that point for the most part, except maybe some trick plays. So I definitely think that's kind of what the Panthers are hoping for, and be able to pin their ears back and just get after Mills, kind of like how they did Zach Wilson in week 1.
I guess the obvious flip side to that as well on the offense has got to be try and hit those big chunk plays right at the start, jump out to an early lead and force the Texans to move away from that run game and try and spread the ball around and let the Carolina defense backfield kind of make the plays that they need to make.
Yeah, I think they've done that in the first 2 games too. They've gotten off to really good starts too, heading into halftime. They hadn't been able to sustain it offensively. I know they've been running the football a little bit more in the second half, but yeah, I definitely think that's kind of the game plan, especially a team like this. Your first road game of the year too, tricky, short week. You really don't know what to expect. Like I said, I think the Texans are a better team than I think some people project. They kind of caught a break, I think, with Tyrod Taylor not playing, because I think that would have added a little bit more tricky situation for the Panthers defense trying to cover somebody that's mobile like him. And I think he was solid prior to his injury. But yeah, I think they're gonna just be able to control the game that way. I think the biggest thing for offensively is just not making mistakes, just not being yourself. And in a game like this, especially a team that you should win pretty handily against too as well.
Yeah, and staying with the offense, how important has it been to sort of have Joe Brady around still as offensive coordinator, because he seems to be able to be getting the best out of Sam Darnold at the moment?
I think there's been some hit, miss, good and bad moments with Joe Brady. I think the good has been getting, Sam Darnold the way he's been looking so far this year, and obviously, having the weapons that they do offensively. I think probably we've seen it throughout the course of even last year and then a little bit into this year too as well. The red zone issues. I definitely think that's been a big thing with the Panthers too. They've been able to get into the red zone, but they still have to settle for field goals. And then, if you're trying to be one of the, best 7 teams in your conference, you got to be able to score touchdowns, especially if you're playing a team like a Tampa Bay twice throughout the course of the year. You want to try to get one of those wins against them and some of the other upper echelon teams in the NFC. You definitely have to find ways to score touchdowns when you get that close within the red zone. I think that's probably the biggest, complaint Panthers fans have, and obviously probably the kicking game too, but that doesn't necessarily affect Joe Brady. But yeah, I definitely think that so far the reviews have been pretty solid about Joe Brady, but yeah, they definitely need to clean the red zone situations up.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, having Christian McCaffrey back is definitely sort of something that's definitely is going to help in the red zone when needed too. Just moving on then to sort of things to look out for in this game, especially tonight. From a Panthers point of view, looking at the Texans, where are you sort of looking at in terms of the biggest threats to the Panthers tonight?
I think just taking care of make sure Donald is upright. Really, just making sure the offensive line for the Panthers has always been a weak spot for them, and I still think it is. It's been playing okay at times, but they've still allowed pressure from time to time. Where you look at the Jets game, you also look at the game against the Saints too as well, and anytime you can get pressure on the quarterback, bad things can potentially happen there. So yeah, I think just trying to take pressure off of him and protect him as much as possible. I think that's kind of where you're looking at. And, we've seen the Texans, they play well at times, especially defensively. So, yeah, I definitely think it's important to make sure you take care of Donald so you can try to limit the amount of mistakes that he makes.
And then on the defensive side of things, is primarily getting at Davis, kind of stopping the run, the main two aspects of the game that you're going to be looking at?
Yeah, I think really just stopping the run and try to get pressure off of Mills as much as possible to force them in long situations and possible turnovers. That's really it sounds simple, but I definitely think that's really the key of the game.
Actually, no, so I meant to ask when the defense was when we were speaking about the defense earlier, but the first round pick this year, J.C. Horn, who probably would cover maybe Brandon Cooks tonight at some stage, and he's probably their standout wide receiver. How has Horn settled into the side?
Well, I think he's been solid so far. He recorded his first interception last week, and he's somebody. Cornerback is such a tricky position coming into the league. First off, because you're kind of like a chicken with your head cut off at times. You're trying to learn just the speed of the game, but also some of the new route trees that the receivers are running and things of that nature too. So yeah, I think he's been solid so far. And now you get an AJ Bouye back, which I think is only going to help the Panthers secondary too as well. So yeah, I'm definitely I believe they'll be just fine in that area. But so far, J.C. Horn has been a solid surprise there, and I'm ready to pick for him.
Yeah, he got a nice, easy, soft one for his first interception. There wasn't much around him. He just had to stand there and pick it. But we were talking to Graham a little bit earlier on. He was surprised by how good the offensive line is for Houston and has played for the first two games. But I suspect, and I wonder, do you agree, Antwan? I don't think that's going to be much of a problem for the Panthers this week, given they're going to focus probably mostly on those running backs. And like you said, if Mills does try and sling the ball around, that's not necessarily a huge problem for the Panthers as their defense is set up at the moment.
No, I think that's kind of what they would like them to do, is be able to pass it as much as possible. If the way they start running it, then I definitely think that's where you see defensive players start to get more and more tired, and you keep them out there on the field longer. And I think that's kind of what Houston kind of wants there moving forward. But yeah, I think they want them to be able to pin their ears back and be able to throw the football as much as possible.
Yeah, and this is the first of two road games in a row for the Panthers. They play the Cowboys next week, and then they're back home against the Eagles. So two NFC East sides in a row. It's not totally inconceivable that by the end of that Eagles game that the Panthers could be 5-0.
We'll see. I don't know.
He doesn't want to jinx it.
I just want to hear you say it. The Panthers are going to be 5-0.
I don't have any horse in the race, so I don't. It doesn't matter to me. But I definitely think the Cowboys game is tricky, and then this is a typical trap game because people think automatically the Panthers are going to win, and they probably should, but you never know, especially on the short week. You're going on the road for the first time, and it can get tricky. 5-0. I don't know if they're going to be 5-0, but I definitely think they'll have an opportunity to stay with the Cowboys at least anyway.
Perfect diplomatic answer there now for sure.
Like I say, I don't have a horse in the race, and when it comes to the Panthers, so I just try to report on what's true. So,
looking at then the game tonight, prediction wise, what do you think is going to happen?
I think as far as if you happen to bet on the game, I definitely think I would take the Texans with the points possibly, because I think they've shown good enough they can stay with teams, but I think the Panthers will probably squeak one out maybe by a field goal or 4 points or so. But yeah, I definitely think the Panthers will get the victory.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I sort of agree with you in terms of I think the Panthers will win. I don't know why. I just have a weird suspicion that it might not be as close. I think Tyrod missing is a big issue. for them. So I think it's going to stop them from moving the ball up the field as effectively as they want, because I think that Panthers defense is real. Obviously, the team spent all of their draft picks last year on getting that defense. Now they have a year under their belt sorted. I think that's they're looking pretty good, and I think maybe that I think it could be a comfortable enough win for the Panthers. Fionn, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go 2 scores. I reckon the Panthers probably get 3 touchdowns in the first half. I think their slow second half might continue, just a field goal. So I reckon somewhere around 24-10. I think the Texans will maybe scrape a field goal in the middle just to keep themselves ticking along, and then score a touchdown right at the end when the game's kind of iced a little bit. So that's how I see it going anyway.
Well, we have seen a little bit of a trend in that, and I'd love to get your opinion on it, Antwan, as well. That there has been a couple of teams so far in these first 2 weeks where it's been all gas, no breaks in the first half, and then when it comes to the second half, they seem to tire out. I noticed it there with the Seahawks, the Lions the other night as well against the Packers, scored all of their 17 points in the first half too. There's definitely been a few sides that have struggled to sort of keep any sort of to keep things going into the second half, especially if they performed well in the first.
Well, I think it's a few things. I think teams adjusting to other teams. I think that has a little bit to do with it. Also, I just think the lack of players playing in the preseason, I think that has a little bit to do with it. And I mean, some players played, some did not. So early on in the season, you're still conditioning has a big factor too as well. You're still learning how to play 4 quarters, even though you've played years and years doing it. But each year is a little bit different, especially when you're trying to get your body into doing it. It's you can't simulate that during that practice. So I definitely think that has a little bit to do with it too as well. So yeah, I think as time goes on, you'll start to see a little bit more offensive start to get things going as the season moves on. But yeah, it's hard, especially early on when some of these players did not play at all throughout the course of the preseason. So they're still getting adjusted to playing for 60 minutes.
Yeah, excellent. Well, listen, Anton, it's been so great to speak to you today. Before we let you go, where can people read some of your work?
The Riot Report. You find my work at Antwan Staley on Twitter. If you're on there, that's probably the best place to find me too as well. So yeah, you can read my work there and check me out.
Excellent. Again, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us today. I really hope you enjoy the game later on.
All right, then y'all take it easy.
Thanks very much.
And that is the end of our preview today. Thanks so much to Anton, who took the time to speak to us there before the game. And, of course, Graham Henderson from Texans UK, who spoke to us in the first half of the show. Fionn, thanks to you, as always. We can't get the legal issue with Jake sorted out this evening, but hopefully by next week we will have all 3 of us on board together.
He just has to say sorry. That's all I'm looking for.
Well, look, as the famous song is, sorry seems to be the hardest word. But you know what isn't? When you hear that Thursday night football music start later on tonight, because we do have football again. It comes around so quickly. It's so great when we get this time of year. It's brilliant. But that, like I said, that is it. Make sure if you aren't already, make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram. They're both at Under Center Pod. We are also on Facebook, facebook.com/Under Center Pod. Make sure you're listening to, or make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, because we are going to be having our Beat the Bookies show this week as well, to sort of win you a little bit of money heading into this weekend too. So make sure you're tuned into that as well, so we can get you a bit of money for this weekend, and maybe get ourselves, Fiona, a little bit of money too if we like each other's bets enough.
I think so. We need it. I think the pair of us need it.
Definitely, for sure. Look at me in these rags here. I need new clothes here. I need new clothes. But that is it for tonight's show. If you are staying up to watch the game, I hope you enjoy it. But if not, we will see you soon. So make sure you stay safe.